My wife cheated on me, and when she admitted everything, she had the audacity to suggest that dating both me and the other guy simultaneously would be the perfect solution for all of us. As I prepared for our annual fishing trip, a tradition I'd cherished for years, a sense of unease settled over me. This trip, which was typically a highlight of the year with my closest friends and their wives, already felt like it was unraveling before it began. Connor had to postpone his arrival because of work, meaning his wife, Julia, would also be late. Nathan had a last-minute business meeting, leaving his wife, Rebecca, at home. When my wife, Lily, realized she'd be the only woman attending from the start, she opted out completely. The cancellations and delays felt like the beginning of the end for a tradition that had always brought laughter, camaraderie, and intimacy into our lives. The thought of this trip being less lively made me reflect on my relationship with Lily. In the week leading up to it, she and I had experienced an unexpected surge of passion, a whirlwind of intimacy that left us both drained but oddly satisfied. It felt like a glimmer of our earlier years, those times when we couldn't keep our hands off each other. But now, it seemed like a cruel reminder of how far we'd drifted from that spark. For the majority of the year, our physical connection had become mechanical, something we did out of routine rather than desire. Twice a week, maybe, just enough to maintain appearances. It wasn't like the beginning of our marriage when the passion was undeniable, consuming, and constant. About 5 years ago, though, that fire began to dwindle. Our intimate moments became less frequent, shrinking to just a few times a month. I noticed Lily pulling away, her reluctance obvious. Arguments flared occasionally, but eventually, I just resigned myself to the new reality, swallowing my frustration in silence. That Thursday evening, I sat in the den nursing a beer, trying to relax after packing for the trip. Lily was upstairs, tucking the kids into bed, a routine that had become as much a part of our lives as the distance between us. When she came downstairs, holding a glass of wine, her face was unusually serious. She sat beside me, the weight of something significant hanging in the air. "Michael," she began, her voice measured but heavy, "we need to talk. Please, let me finish before you respond. I promise I'll answer all your questions afterward." Her tone sent a chill down my spine. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to be good. I nodded reluctantly, already bracing myself for the worst. "Our marriage, it hasn't been fulfilling for either of us, especially in the bedroom," she said, looking away as if the words were hard to voice. "I love you, but the excitement we used to share is gone. You're an amazing father, a dependable provider, and a wonderful friend. But I need something more, something that reignites that spark." Her words stung, but before I could interrupt, she raised a hand, silencing me. "Please, Michael. You said you'd let me finish." I clenched my fists, forcing myself to listen despite the anger bubbling inside me. She took a deep breath and pressed on. "There's someone else," she admitted, her voice soft but unflinching. "He makes me feel alive in ways I haven't in years. It's not just about sex, Michael, it's the connection. He reminds me of how we were when we first fell in love." I shot up from my seat, the anger exploding out of me. "You cheating witch! How could you do this to me?" But Lily didn't flinch. She stepped closer, her voice sharp and commanding. "Sit down, Michael. Now. You promised to listen, and I'm not finished." Her sudden authority stunned me. I sank back into my chair, seething but silent, as she stood over me, her confidence chilling. "I've spoken to a lawyer," she continued. "If we divorce, it won't end well for you. I'll get alimony, child support, the house, and custody of the kids. Half of our savings, and your retirement fund will be mine. You'll barely have enough to scrape by." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Lily wasn't just confessing, she was laying out a plan that left me utterly powerless. "For the sake of the kids, and honestly for your own good, you need to accept this arrangement," she said coldly. "Nothing has to change drastically. I'll still be here, but I need my time with him, too." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. how long has this been going on? That's not your business, she replied dismissively. If you try to find out, there will be consequences, legal and otherwise. I'm done sneaking around. I want to be honest about when I'm out so you can watch the kids. Her indifference was infuriating, but what shocked me most was her confidence. She wasn't asking for forgiveness, she was dictating terms. I'm not asking you to like it, Michael, she said, her tone icy. But this is the way things are now. She walked over to her desk and retrieved a thick envelope, tossing it onto my lap. Read this, she commanded. It's proof that we've been keeping tabs on you. If you interfere with my plans, we'll know, and it won't end well for you. As Lily disappeared upstairs, I sat frozen in my chair, my world crumbling around me. When I finally opened the envelope, I found a detailed report that chronicled my every move over the past month. Every glance, every conversation, every minor action, it was all there. It felt invasive, violating, and terrifyingly thorough. I couldn't fathom how someone could gather so much information without me noticing. Was my phone bugged? Were there cameras in my home? The level of surveillance pointed to someone with significant resources, and that realization only deepened my dread. As I sat there, reeling from the betrayal and the threats, one thought kept echoing in my mind: who is this woman? The person I married was gone, replaced by someone cold, calculating, and unrecognizable. As I wrestled with my thoughts, trying to figure out the best way to extricate myself from the nightmare Lily had created without destroying my life in the process, it became clear I needed advice. My first instinct was to turn to my lifelong friends. After all, they'd been there for me through thick and thin. But a chilling realization stopped me cold: what if one of them was in on this? What if Lily's lover was one of my closest confidants? Seeking their help could be like handing a spy my battle plans. While I spiraled deeper into paranoia, Lily called down from the top of the stairs, her voice sultry and mocking. Are you coming to bed, Michael, or are you just going to brood down there all night? Her footsteps disappeared into the bedroom, leaving me stewing in the den. I didn't join her. Instead, I spent the night on the couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the past few days. Lily woke me early, her anger palpable. She slammed a pan onto the stove as she started breakfast. Get up, Michael, she snapped. You need to shower and get ready before the kids notice you didn't sleep in our room. And when you come back from your trip, I expect you to act like everything's fine. I've already told you what will happen if you mess things up for this family. I'm willing to meet some of your needs, but you better play your part, too. And just so you know, if you even think about finding someone else, I'll file for divorce. Her audacity hit a nerve, and I couldn't hold back. What is this, Lily? You get to cheat and think that's fine, but I can't even consider it? Not that I want to, but why is it okay for you, and not for me? She smirked, a cold, condescending expression that sent a fresh wave of anger through me. Oh, come on, Michael. We both know you're satisfied with what I give you. If you go looking for someone else, it's just to spite me. I'm stepping outside our marriage because you haven't been enough. If you could satisfy me, I wouldn't need anyone else. I expect you to stay faithful while I get what I need. I stammered, barely able to process what I was hearing. You've got to be kidding me. You never once told me you were unhappy, never asked me to change anything. How was I supposed to know you wanted more when you acted like everything was fine? I've always tried to make sure you were satisfied, and you never complained. Lily crossed her arms, her tone dripping with disdain. Well, if you're asking now, you're clueless, aren't you? It's not just about quantity, Michael, it's about quality. You've never really pleased me, and you never will. That's why I had to find it elsewhere. Now, stop whining and get dressed. I couldn't bring myself to respond. I went upstairs, went through the motions of my morning routine, and came back down for breakfast. The kids were already at the table, and as I sat down, our son, Charlie, asked innocently, Dad, are you okay? You look upset. Before I could respond, Lily cut in smoothly. Your dad's just a little stressed. He'll be fine after his trip. She shot me a warning glare, daring me to contradict her. I ignored her and made a decision then and there: I wasn't going on the trip. I called Justin, who was supposed to carpool with me, and told him I had urgent matters to handle and wouldn't be joining. But Justin wasn't having it. "Michael, no way," he said firmly. "Lily already warned me you might try to back out. She said you've been stressed, but confirmed with your secretary that you don't have anything urgent going on. I promised her I'd get you to come. If I have to drag you there myself, I will. You're coming, no excuses." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Justin knew? Was he in on this? My paranoia deepened. Lily had said she'd be leaving for the weekend, but Justin was insisting I come along. And then there was Connor, who was joining midweek instead of at the start. Was he the one? Or someone else entirely? I considered buying surveillance equipment to figure out what was really going on, but I knew Lily and her network were watching everything: credit card purchases, phone calls, even cash withdrawals. They'd notice any unusual activity instantly. As I sat at my desk, trying to think of a way out, my phone buzzed. It was Lily. Her voice was cold and commanding. "Michael, I told you to go on your trip. Justin just called me and said you tried to back out. Let me make this clear: if you cross me, you'll lose everything. The kids, the house, your savings, all of it. Do you understand?" She hung up before I could say a word. I sat there in shock. Justin had betrayed me. Whether he was part of her scheme or just being manipulated, I couldn't trust him, or anyone else, for that matter. With no other options, I decided to go on the trip. At Denny's, the usual meeting spot, the guys were laughing and joking as if everything was normal. I forced myself to join in, but my heart wasn't in it. Nathan eventually noticed. "Hey, man, what's up? You've been acting weird all morning." I hesitated before replying. "It's Lily. She's got some ideas, and I don't know how to handle them. If she's serious, my marriage might be over." Justin chimed in, grinning. "Don't worry, Michael. Lily called me and said you've been stressed. She made me promise to make sure you'd come on this trip and have a good time." Nathan nodded. "Yeah, you've seemed off lately. Let's just relax and enjoy ourselves. We've got beer, whiskey, and plenty of stories to tell." The drive to the cabin was short, just a couple of hours, but it felt like an eternity. I couldn't stop thinking about Lily's affair and how to uncover the truth. That night, after a few too many drinks, Nathan pressed me for details. I spilled everything: Lily's confession, her threats, and my helplessness. Nathan's response floored me. "Michael, as your friend, I get it. But as someone who knows how these things work, you're in a tough spot. Divorce courts favor mothers, and you'd lose custody, the house, and half your savings. Maybe sticking it out is the best option." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. These were my friends, yet their advice sounded more like surrender than support. The next morning, as I tried to clear my head with some fishing, my phone buzzed. It was Lily. Her message chilled me to the bone. "Well, honey, I hear you had a little chat with Nathan last night. I hope you're going to follow his advice. Remember, I'm watching. Don't do anything foolish." I stared at the phone in disbelief. How did she know? My gear must be bugged. I needed to figure out who was helping her, and fast. Michael stood stunned by the weight of the restraining order in his hands, its contents solidifying the realization that his life had just taken an even darker turn. As he drove away from the gate, his mind raced with anger and disbelief. Nathan, the man he'd trusted as his lawyer and friend, had betrayed him. Worse, his wife, Lily, had weaponized this betrayal to strike the first legal blow in what was shaping up to be a brutal battle. He gripped the steering wheel tightly as he pulled up to the driveway of his assistant, Rachel's, house. The modest home was a stark contrast to the chaos swirling through Michael's world. When Rachel opened the door, her face immediately filled with concern. "Michael, you look terrible. What's going on? She asked, her tone soft but cautious. Michael hesitated, feeling the full weight of his crumbling world. Finally, he said, I need to talk, Rachel. I don't even know where to start. Rachel stepped aside, inviting him in. She led him to the small, cozy living room and gestured for him to sit on the worn couch. Take your time, she said, her voice steady. I'm here to listen. Michael sank into the cushions and took a deep breath. Rachel, I've been served a restraining order. Lily claims I'm a threat to her, the kids, and even our business. I can't believe this is happening. She's locked me out of everything, our home, our accounts, even my own company's finances. Rachel's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Michael, this is serious. Do you have any proof of what's going on with her? He shook his head, frustration spilling out. Not yet, but I know she's been unfaithful. She's flaunting it now, practically daring me to react. She's got Nathan on her side, and he's turned into her attorney. Can you believe that? My own lawyer is helping her tear my life apart. Rachel frowned, her brow furrowed in thought. If she's got Nathan on her team, that complicates things. You'll need someone else, someone you can trust, to represent you. Do you have anyone in mind? Michael shook his head again. No. I don't know who to trust anymore. It feels like everyone's on her side. Rachel leaned forward, her voice firm. Then you need to act fast. Start documenting everything. Conversations, dates, times, everything she's done and said to you. And get a lawyer, Michael. A good one. Michael rubbed his temples, the weight of Rachel's words sinking in. You're right, he said finally. I can't let her win. Not like this. But I'm locked out of my accounts. I can't even hire anyone right now. Rachel straightened, her determination clear. We'll figure it out. I'll help you with the documentation, and I know a few people who might be able to recommend a lawyer. You're not in this alone, Michael. Her words brought him a small measure of relief, a flicker of hope in the storm of betrayal and despair. Thanks, Rachel. I don't know what I'd do without you. They spent the next few hours going over everything Michael could recall, Lily's confession, her threats, Nathan's betrayal, and the restraining order. Rachel took notes diligently, her expression a mix of focus and anger. Michael, she said finally, this isn't just a divorce. She's trying to destroy you. But you're not going down without a fight. Michael nodded, feeling a spark of resolve reignite within him. No, I'm not. She might think she's won, but I'll find a way to turn this around. As he left Rachel's house that evening, Michael felt a flicker of determination amidst the chaos. The road ahead was uncertain and fraught with challenges, but he knew one thing for sure, he wouldn't give up without a fight. Lily might have started this war, but Michael was determined to finish it. Michael looked at Susan, desperation evident in his eyes. I need help, and you're the only person I can trust, he admitted, his voice heavy with exhaustion. I hate to bother you on a weekend, but I'm in deep trouble. I don't know where else to turn. Susan hesitated for a moment, glancing at her husband, Daniel, who was sitting at the kitchen table with half-eaten plates of eggs and toast in front of him. Come on in, Michael, she said finally, stepping aside. Would you like some coffee? Michael followed her into the kitchen, suddenly aware that he'd interrupted their brunch. I'm sorry, he murmured, his voice faltering. I shouldn't have come. I'll go. Daniel looked up from his plate and gestured for Michael to sit. You look like hell, man. Sit down and tell us what's going on, he said firmly. Michael reluctantly pulled out a chair and sat, his hands trembling slightly as he rested them on the table. He began to recount the events of the past 2 weeks, Lily's betrayal, Nathan's involvement, the restraining order, and how his so-called friends had spent the trip trying to manipulate him into accepting the affair. They told me to let it go, Michael said bitterly. That since I hadn't noticed her cheating for years, it shouldn't bother me now. They acted like I was the problem for not playing along. And now Nathan's representing Lily, locking me out of everything. I can't even buy breakfast without my cards being declined. I'm cut off from my accounts, my house, everything. Susan leaned back, shock etched on her face. Michael, I can't believe Lily would do this to you, she said, glancing at Daniel. We have to help him. Daniel nodded thoughtfully, rubbing his chin. If what you're saying is true, Michael, you're in serious trouble. But I hope to God you're not being watched or bugged. We need to be cautious. Daniel stood and motioned for Michael to follow him downstairs. Come with me, he said, his tone serious. Once they reached the basement, Daniel stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Strip down and give me your clothes. There's a shower over there. I'll get you some clean clothes to wear. Michael hesitated but complied, handing over his clothes. Daniel carried them upstairs to leave by the front door, ensuring they wouldn't bring any potential listening devices further into the house. Meanwhile, Michael showered and changed into a pair of Daniel's old sweatpants and a t-shirt. When Michael returned to the basement, Daniel and Susan were waiting in a small cement storm shelter beneath the stairs. It felt like something out of a spy movie, and Michael couldn't help but feel ridiculous as he sat down. Is this really necessary? He asked, managing a faint smile. Susan nodded firmly. If they're tracking you, Michael, we can't take any chances. The three of them spent the next hour communicating through handwritten notes, mapping out a plan. Daniel agreed to reach out to trusted contacts who could help investigate Lily and the others without drawing attention to Michael. Susan offered to lend Michael money discreetly so he could begin his countermoves. They decided that for now, Michael would stay out of direct contact with Lily and his friends to avoid tipping them off. On Sunday, the trio had lunch together, sharing a rare moment of levity amidst the chaos. Susan cracked a few jokes, and for the first time in weeks, Michael found himself laughing. Meanwhile, at Michael's house, Lily hosted a meeting with Nathan, Connor, and Justin. The group huddled in the living room, their conversation low but intense as they discussed their next steps. As the meeting wrapped up, Justin leaned back in his chair, a troubled expression on his face. I'm not feeling good about all this, he admitted, breaking the silence. Meeting like this today, what if Michael finds out? Maybe we should lay low for a while. Nathan shook his head. We've come too far to back off now. If we wait, we risk losing control of the situation. We need to stay ahead of him. Lily crossed her arms and frowned. Michael's too predictable, she said dismissively. He won't figure anything out. And even if he does, he has no resources to fight back. We've got this under control. Justin exchanged a wary glance with Connor but said nothing more. As the group dispersed, an uneasy tension lingered in the air. Lily might have been confident, but cracks in their alliance were beginning to show. Michael remained stoic as Nathan's tirade filled the line, his voice seething with fury. Despite the rage directed at him, Michael leaned back in his chair and let Nathan rant, calmly planning his next move. You're pathetic, Nathan, Michael said finally, his tone sharp but composed. You really think you've won, don't you? Newsflash, you're about to lose a whole lot more than just your reputation. By the time this is over, you'll be the one begging for scraps. Nathan growled on the other end. Don't test me, Michael. You have no idea who you're messing with. Michael smirked, his anger now tempered by a cold satisfaction. Oh, I know exactly who I'm dealing with, a snake in the grass who's finally getting what's coming to him. Keep your threats coming, Nathan. Every word you spew just adds to the pile of evidence I'm building against you. After hanging up, Michael replayed the call in his mind, cataloging every incriminating statement Nathan had made. His enemy's arrogance would be their downfall. Earlier that day, Michael's new attorney, Claire Jones, had given him an update on their progress. She was fiercely determined, and her meticulous approach was already paying off. We filed motions to unfreeze your accounts, she informed him during their morning meeting. And the investigator has uncovered some interesting financial ties between Lily and Nathan. It's a tangled web, but we're pulling at the right threads. Michael nodded, feeling a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. Good. Keep at it. I want every angle covered. They've underestimated me for too long. By Wednesday afternoon, the fallout from the videos Michael had distributed was in full swing. Calls poured in from shocked friends, family, and even acquaintances who had stumbled upon the damning footage. Each conversation was a mix of disbelief, sympathy, and, occasionally, outright glee from those who reveled in the downfall of the self-righteous. Then came Lily's call. Her sobs were loud and deliberate, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Michael, how could you do this to me? I thought you loved me. It was just sex. You know you weren't giving me what I needed. Why would you ruin everything like this?" Michael let out a low, mocking chuckle. "Lily, let's get one thing straight. You ruined everything the moment you decided to betray me. All I've done is make sure the world knows who you really are. If you're embarrassed, maybe you should have thought about that before climbing into bed with my so-called friends." Her voice broke, and she sobbed harder. "This isn't fair. You're destroying my life." Michael's laughter grew colder. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you coming to me and being honest instead of sneaking around like a coward. But you didn't. So now you can live with the consequences." The line went dead, but Michael barely had a moment's respite before another call came in, this time from Lily's sister. Her tone dripped with mockery. "Michael, you poor fool," she said, a sinister edge to her voice. "Guess you finally figured out who Lily really is, huh? So, I take it you're the one behind the video? Nice work. It seems my dear sister and I will now be sharing the boys." Michael's stomach churned at the implications of her words, and her maniacal laughter echoed in his mind long after the call ended. By the time Nathan called later that afternoon, Michael was prepared. Nathan's voice was a mix of anger and desperation, his threats coming fast and furious. "You've crossed the line, Michael," Nathan bellowed. "Do you have any idea what you've done? I'll make sure you regret this for the rest of your miserable life." Michael remained calm, letting Nathan ramble on. "Is that so?" he said coolly. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one whose life is falling apart. I've got nothing left to lose, Nathan. But you? You've got a lot of explaining to do, to your wife, your clients, and everyone else who trusted you." Nathan snarled. "You idiot. If you had just done what Lily and I told you, you'd still have your family, your money, and your dignity. But no, you had to play the hero. Now, I'll take Lily whenever I want, and I'll take most of your money, too. You're finished." Michael smirked, leaning back in his chair. "Keep talking, Nathan. Every word you say just digs your grave a little deeper." As the call ended, Michael felt a cold sense of satisfaction. His enemies thought they had all the power, but they had underestimated just how far he was willing to go to reclaim control of his life. The game had only just begun. Michael stood on the balcony of his modest new home, overlooking a quiet suburban street. The fresh air felt liberating after months of chaos. His life had changed dramatically, but he couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. Justice had finally prevailed, and he had reclaimed his dignity. Nathan's last threats had been vicious. "I'll make sure you suffer, Michael. I'll have the guys rough you up, drain your accounts, and sue you into the ground. I've been with Lily since high school, and I'll be with her long after you're out of the picture. Enjoy life in the gutter, because that's where you'll end up." Nathan's arrogance had been his undoing. Unbeknownst to him, every word of his threats had been recorded by Michael's automated call system, a system Nathan had ironically advised him to install years earlier. The computerized voice stating, "All calls are recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please hang up now," was ignored in his rage, ensuring every damning statement was captured. Lily's parents had also called, distraught. Her mother's sobs echoed through the phone. "Michael, I know she hurt you, but how could you spread those pictures? Couldn't this have been resolved more civilly?" Michael had listened silently, feeling a pang of guilt. Still, he couldn't regret his actions. For years, he'd been blindsided by betrayal, and now the truth was out for all to see. By the evening, he was reassured by the system's logs. Every incriminating call, including Nathan's threats, had been preserved. Michael's attorney, Claire, moved swiftly. Nathan was reported to the State Bar Association for gross misconduct. The evidence of his unethical behavior, including his threats and involvement in Lily's betrayal, was irrefutable. Within weeks, Nathan's law license was suspended, and he was disbarred permanently. His career, once promising, crumbled overnight. The divorce proceedings were the next battleground. Lily initially sought half of everything Michael owned, his business, savings, and even custody of their children. But Daniel's contact had delivered critical evidence, photographs showing Lily in compromising situations with her lovers. One image in particular struck a devastating blow, a child peeking through the patio door, witnessing her mother's infidelity. It was undeniable proof of Lily's negligence and emotional harm to the children. The judge ruled decisively in Michael's favor, granting him full custody. Lily received only 25% of their marital assets, a fraction of what she had expected. Michael retained his company and most of his savings. The victory was bittersweet, but it felt like vindication. The repercussions for Nathan extended beyond his career. Michael's lawsuit for breaching attorney-client privilege and conspiring against him resulted in a staggering $1.3 million judgment. Nathan's unethical behavior and his relationship with Lily led to severe fines from the state, pushing him into financial ruin. Meanwhile, Nathan's wife, Hannah, filed for divorce, draining what little remained of their shared assets. By the time she was done, Nathan was left penniless. Connor faced a similar fate. His wife, Emily, discovered the extent of his betrayal and swiftly filed for divorce. She claimed a significant portion of their assets, leaving Connor struggling to rebuild his life. Surprisingly, Justin's marriage to Sophie endured for a while. It was later revealed that Sophie had been complicit in some of the scheming, although Justin began to resent the toxic dynamic among his friends. When Nathan and Connor moved in with him after being kicked out of their homes, tensions reached a breaking point. One night, Connor, fueled by frustration and alcohol, lashed out violently. A brutal fight left him hospitalized, and both he and Nathan faced charges. The court sentenced them to a year in jail, marking the final chapter of their downfall. With his enemies defeated, Michael focused on rebuilding his life. He sold the house he had once shared with Lily and purchased a cozy home for himself and the kids. His business flourished under his careful management, free from the interference of those who had tried to tear him down. Michael often thought about the lessons he'd learned. Trust was fragile, and betrayal could come from the people closest to you. But he also learned the importance of standing up for himself, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. His resilience had carried him through the darkest times, and now he was stronger for it. Looking out at the quiet street, Michael felt a sense of peace. His children were safe, his business thriving, and the people who had betrayed him were facing the consequences of their actions. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope for a brighter future.